14 billion barrels of oil vanished overnight in California. Not because it was pumped out, not because it burned up. It disappeared on paper, in a single report, and it erased an entire fortune while people were still celebrating it. Picture this. The Monterey Shale was supposed to be the biggest oil jackpot in American history. Companies rushed in. Investors poured in billions of dollars. Whole towns started planning their future around the money this land was supposed to produce for decades. Then, one report landed on a government desk. A handful of scientists sat down, ran the numbers again, and found something that made their stomachs drop. What everyone believed was down there wasn't actually there, not even close. Overnight, 14 billion barrels turned into a fraction of that number. Companies that had already spent fortunes preparing to drill were suddenly staring at land worth almost nothing. But here's what nobody's fully explained. How does an estimate that big get it that wrong? Was it a mistake? Or did somebody know the truth long before that report ever came out? So what really happened underneath California that made 14 billion barrels disappear in a single afternoon? And who knew the truth before the rest of us did? The story starts in July 2011, when the U.S. Energy Information Administration released a report that sent shockwaves through the energy sector. Buried within the pages of this official federal forecast was a staggering calculation. California's Monterey Shale, a massive underground rock formation stretching across the state's coastal ranges and Central Valley, held over 15 billion barrels of technically recoverable tight oil. Almost overnight, this geological layer became a national symbol of absolute abundance. The government's assessment, drawn from a study by an engineering firm named Intech, declared the Monterey to be the largest onshore shale oil resource in the entire country. It was a staggering claim. It meant California alone held nearly 2/3 of America's total shale oil wealth. The public and the media treated the news like the ultimate American jackpot. Before most citizens even knew how to locate the Monterey Formation on a map, they were told it would spark a modern gold rush, creating millions of jobs and pumping billions into local communities. It was a promise of secure, domestic wealth that felt too massive to fail, long before anyone looked closely at the actual rock. Major energy companies moved instantly to lock down their share of the jackpot. Occidental Petroleum, VANISH, and Plains Exploration rushed to secure leasing rights, locking up more than 2 million acres of California land. In corporate boardrooms, the federal government's forecast was treated as cash already in the bank. VANISH's chief executive, Tim Marquez, launched a $400 million buyout of his own company's shares to fund massive new drilling operations. Industry executives publicly boasted about experimental techniques that would easily unlock this historic prize, and Wall Street analysts quickly fell in line. On the ground, local communities started spending the money before the first new wells were even drilled. In Kern County, the historic heart of California's oil patch, officials drew up future budgets with an estimated $1.2 billion in new tax revenues. Towns planned a $250 million school bond and major highway expansions, while Santa Barbara County earmarked future royalties for shoreline restoration. From Bakersfield to Salinas, local chambers of commerce watched real estate speculation skyrocket as investors snapped up commercial yards, office space, and residential properties. It was an entire economy built on a promise. Long before any engineers could prove the oil could actually be extracted, working-class communities and multi-billion-dollar corporations alike began living inside a giant math equation, betting their collective futures on a geological forecast that had never been tested in the dirt. In May 2014, a new document landed on desks at the U.S. Energy Information Administration in Washington. It was the Annual Energy Outlook for 2014. Inside, a small team of government scientists, led by petroleum analyst John Staub, had spent months analyzing actual production data from the few pilot wells operating in California. They were not looking at glossy corporate presentations. They were looking at real flow rates and physical core samples. As they ran the field-level numbers, the baseline assumptions of the gold rush began to disintegrate. The mathematics of the promised jackpot did not hold up. Staub and his team found that the geological properties of the Monterey Shale, its extreme tectonic folding, high clay content, and ultra-low permeability, made it impossible to extract the oil using standard horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. The recalculation was brutal and absolute. The scientists trimmed the estimated fracturable acreage by nearly 90%, shrinking the target zone from over 1,700 square miles to just 192. Then, they ran the last calculation. What people believed was underground was not actually there, not even close. The federal government officially wiped out 96% of the Monterey's tight oil. Instantly, the estimate fell from nearly 14 billion barrels to a mere 600 million. In a single morning, a theoretical fortune evaporated on paper, resetting the future of California's energy landscape with a single, devastating stroke. To understand how billions of barrels of oil could vanish from a government ledger, look at the physical rock itself. The original 15 billion barrel estimate relied on a classic geological misstep: sampling bias. In 2011, analysts took measurements from a small number of high-quality core samples, retrieved from exceptional, highly productive pockets of the Monterey Formation. They measured the rock's porosity, the tiny spaces where oil sits, and its permeability, which is the measure of how easily fluids can flow through those pores. The estimators then took these ideal, localized numbers and multiplied them across the entire 70,000 square mile expanse of the formation. They treated the Monterey as a flat, uniform, continuous sheet. But California's geology is rarely uniform. Geoscientists like J. David Hughes quickly pointed out that unlike the flat, orderly shale layers of the Bakken in North Dakota or the Eagle Ford in Texas, the Monterey is a chaotic, tectonic maze. Millions of years of seismic activity along the Pacific coast folded, faulted, and shattered the formation into an unpredictable, accordion-like structure. Drilling a straight horizontal well through a fractured jigsaw puzzle is nearly impossible, as the drill bit constantly hits faults and shifts out of the oil-bearing zone. The second massive error lay in the recovery factor. The 2011 forecast assumed operators could extract 20% of the oil in place, copying the success rates of established Midwest shale plays. But the Monterey's actual rock matrix is rich in clay and diatomite, creating an ultra-low permeability measured in nanodarcies. These microscopic pores are essentially sealed shut. Under real-world testing, engineers discovered the recovery factor was closer to just 2%, meaning 98% of the oil remains permanently locked in the stone. Ultimately, the math broke because the baseline equations treated California's shattered geology as if it were a simple, predictable sandbox. The multi-billion barrel prize was a paper illusion, built on calculations that could not survive physical contact with the rock. When the federal government slashed the Monterey estimate by 96%, it was not just a correction on a spreadsheet, it was a financial demolition. Overnight, a paper fortune worth hundreds of billions of dollars simply ceased to exist. For energy companies that had spent years aggressively buying up leases, the ground beneath their feet turned to lead. Independent resource economists watched the value of these lands evaporate instantly. Massive capital already spent preparing to drill, running seismic tests, and clearing sites was suddenly unrecoverable. Occidental Petroleum, which had earmarked $1 billion for the play, scrambled to isolate the damage. The company spun off its California assets into a new entity, California Resources Corporation, leaving it to absorb a $500 million write-down. At Vinoco, the The $400 million buyout spearheaded by CEO Tim Marquez collapsed under the weight of a $150 million impairment charge, setting a direct path toward bankruptcy. Berry Petroleum and Plains Exploration wrote down another $400 million combined, watching their expensive test wells produce practically nothing. Across the industry, the sudden reversal wiped out $4 billion in market capitalization. The premium leases that investors had fought over were suddenly worth nothing. The paper illusion had shattered, leaving oil executives, Wall Street backers, and local towns staring at a financial crater where a modern gold rush was supposed to be. In Bakersfield, local officials had already mapped out a new future. Armed with predictions of a massive tax windfall, county planners designed a transformed community, a $250 million school bond to build modern classrooms, wider highways, and revitalized parks. They treated the projected oil revenue as a guaranteed foundation. When the federal estimate collapsed, those blueprints became useless. The school bond was postponed indefinitely, leaving classrooms overcrowded and highway expansions frozen in the dirt. Just down the road, small business owners faced a quiet crisis. A local commercial landlord had watched real estate speculation send property prices soaring, investing heavily to build new equipment yards and office complexes for an expected influx of oil field workers. Instead of a bustling hub, those facilities sat empty. The sudden bust left him with a $75,000 deficit in cash flow, forcing him to lay off staff and halt his own expansion plans. The boom everyone prepared for never arrived. For ordinary families, the damage went far deeper. Retiring couples and pensioners had listened to the glowing promises during corporate roadshows, trusting the federal government's numbers. They invested their life savings into local energy funds and leasing royalties, believing the Monterey Shale would protect their future. When the numbers were erased, the average individual investor lost $55,000. For these families, it was not an abstract adjustment on a spreadsheet. It meant selling personal assets, delaying retirement, and returning to work. The quiet, undeveloped fields of the Central Valley became a stark reminder of a promise that changed daily life for thousands who could least afford to lose. Intech Inc., the Virginia-based engineering firm contracted by the federal government, constructed its original 2011 forecast on remarkably fragile mathematical scaffolding. To reach the staggering 15 billion barrel figure, the firm's model assumed a uniform density of 16 wells per square mile across more than 1,700 square miles of California terrain. This meant predicting that nearly 28,000 individual wells would all produce with uniform, high-yield efficiency of 550,000 barrels per well. It was a statistical fantasy. The model relied on a handful of exceptionally rich, hand-picked core samples, ignoring the stark reality that California's geology is highly localized and deeply fractured. By treating the chaotic, accordion-like Monterey Formation as if it were a flat, continuous sheet, like the Bakken in North Dakota, the estimators chose mathematical convenience over physical science. Yet, the warning signs of this analytical failure were documented long before the public collapse. In December 2013, independent geoscientist J. David Hughes published a comprehensive reality check, warning that the Monterey's petrophysical properties were fundamentally incompatible with commercial hydraulic fracturing. Hughes demonstrated that the net-to-gross ratio of productive rock was actually under 5%, meaning the vast majority of the formation was entirely barren. Meanwhile, internal memos revealed that a technical review team within the Energy Information Administration had raised serious concerns about the model's 20% recovery factor as early as the spring of 2013. These scientific red flags were bypassed while corporate lease buying and local budget planning surged ahead. The eventual 96% downgrade was not a sudden geological surprise, but the inevitable correction of a deeply inevitable flawed methodology that valued optimistic analogies over real-world data. Was the collapse of the Monterey Shale estimate merely a case of bad science, or did a culture of systemic wishful thinking take over? When billions of dollars and thousands of lives depend on a single number, the line between honest error and convenient blindness begins to blur. In the years leading up to the 2014 correction, federal regulators operated with remarkably little outside oversight. The Energy Information Administration accepted Intech's highly optimistic model without requiring a rigorous, independent peer review. This systemic failure allowed a deeply speculative projection to be stamped with government authority, turning it into an unquestioned truth for Wall Street and local town halls alike. Yet, the warning signs were documented well before the public reversal. Internal agency files reveal that technical review teams raised concerns about the recovery factors as early as the spring of 2013, and independent geologists like David Hughes had published clear, data-driven red flags. But the momentum of the boom was too profitable to slow down. Corporate executives faced intense pressure from investors to show reserve growth, while public officials eagerly built budgets around a tax windfall that existed only on paper. In this environment, public optimism consistently outpaced scientific verification. The oversight processes proved too weak to challenge a number that so many powerful interests wanted to believe. It exposes a quiet, systemic failure where the rush to claim a prize overrode the basic duty to verify it. Ultimately, the true damage of the Monterey Shale goes far past dry spreadsheets and abandoned lease agreements. When public agencies publish unchecked estimates that trigger massive economic gambles, they risk a far scarcer resource than tight oil. They risk public trust. And when that trust breaks, the loss is far greater than vanished reserves. Today, as we rush toward the next great energy frontier, the ghost of the Monterey Shale remains a warning. It reminds us that the most dangerous illusions are the ones we desperately want to believe. Some fortunes are built on rock. Others are spun from paper. The next bubble is already inflating. Share your thoughts in the comments below.